This is Center Stage, putting lawyers in the spotlight by highlighting attorneys and other industry experts to help take your law firm to the next level. Hey everyone, and welcome to Center Stage. I am your host, John Henson, and this week I am joined by Mr. Steve Cashdollar, and we are going to be talking about how to sell your services and develop new clients along the way. Steve, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks. I appreciate you inviting me in today.
Awesome. So obviously, selling your services is how law firms make money. You are kind of an expert on this, why we've got you here. So before we jump in, tell everybody, kind of who you are and why you are the man to talk about this today.
Well, my business is focused on teaching communication skills primarily, which is what selling and influencing is about. So typically, I love spending time with professionals, attorneys, engineers, CPAs, people who weren't necessarily taught or brought up thinking that they would be selling. They always say law school doesn't spend a whole lot of effort and time on how to sell your services. And in some cases, that might not be correct. But in general, it's not something that someone who's dreamed of being an attorney or practicing law has really thought about. So they're in their world now, the real world, and new business or client development is mandatory in some fashion or another, unless there's a partner who loves building those relationships and you just practice the law. So that's what we spend a fair amount of time just bringing the sales thing down to earth and how to build relationships, how to build trust authentically, not to manipulate or to have to be somebody different. To do that and build a relationship, what we call a trusted advisor relationship, in a real authentic, a little bit bold, but realistic and down to earth way or style. So that's the way I see it.
Awesome. So then, let's dive in here. So, obviously, if you're going to sell your services, you need people to sell them to. In today's climate, in today's environment, how are people buying professional services like legal services?
Well, the world has changed a lot, and typically the buyer, whether it's buying a red widget or a legal service, they're pretty savvy by the time we get in front of them, either in a year or two ago in front of them in person, or now typically a Zoom call or whatever.
Right.
So buyers are savvy. They have a lot of information. Sometimes they think they know more than, or what they know may not be accurate. We get that. I know when I go online to figure out why my side is hurting, I may not get the correct answer. I should probably talk to my doctor, but there is that. But so people are more savvy, but they're also typically more skeptical today because they know more, or at least they believe they know more. So skepticism is huge. Becoming a trusted advisor as opposed to a marketer or a peddler or someone, we would say less salesy and more consulting, better listening. Maybe listen 70% of the time and maybe talk 30% of the time, which kind of goes against our grain when we're trying to influence someone.
Yeah. And I think, and that's kind of why we focus more on content marketing, over with us, because it's all about building that trust, building that credibility, becoming that trusted advisor. So in this kind of becoming more of a post-COVID era, what sort of things have changed when it comes to selling professional services that, may have been different even just as recently as 2-3 years ago?
Well, probably just awareness of the buyer and the marketplace. There's in the legal field, more attorneys see ways to reach out than they might have 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So there is a little bit of a competitive field out there that maybe didn't always exist. But I think the biggest change is what we call skepticism. When a typical, say, potential client either reaches out or is sent to interview or talk to a potential professional or an attorney, there's a certain amount of pressure in those meetings. I always say it's almost like a balloon that's kind of not maybe ready to burst, but it's and the goal would be to help reduce or relieve some of that pressure so that the potential client can relax, tell the truth,
Yeah.
and explain maybe issues, challenges, worries in a real calm way. So I think it's angst from the way of the world that just causes us all to be a little bit more worried now, more
Yeah.
competition, pressure, and just having more information and all that. I believe our goal is to bring down the pressure and make it a lot easier to work with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you've been doing this for a while. I mean, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see attorneys and other professionals make when it comes to them trying to sell their services?
Well, typically they get into the features and benefits of what they're going to do, how they're going to take this action to court, or what letters they'll write, or what legal process is required, and it's happening. That is unfolding too soon, typically, and better probably, if we were going to advise against that, what would be better would be to just ask a few questions first about the client, get to know the client a little more before we jump into the nuts and bolts. And in a lot of arenas, not just law, the nuts and bolts can be a little complex, and people don't really necessarily want all the nuts and bolts. They just want to know what the nut will do or what the bolt will do once it's fastened on there. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
just slow it down a little bit, and hear out the buyer. I mentioned it before. We call it the 70-30 rule. Listen
Yeah.
70%, talking 30 in those first few minutes or hour or so.
Yeah,
Difficult to do.
yeah, and just kind of thinking about that, like putting myself in that situation, if I'm talking to a lawyer, I don't care what motions are going to be filed or what arguments are going to be made or anything like that. I just need to know, what can I expect? What is the outcome? What is the most reasonable outcome that I can expect from working with you? Do you think that, if I'm being charged with something, am I going to be cleared of those charges? If I'm going to be getting divorced, what do I expect to happen? How are things going to change for me? Stuff like that, But I see it in content a lot of times with attorneys, especially with the blogs that they write. They want to get down into the nuts and bolts, like you said, really just get into the finer details. And it's just like, man, people really don't care. They're not going to go that deep into it. They want to know that you understand them. They want to know what the end goal is going to be. And they don't really care how to get there, as long as they feel like you're the person for that job. And so totally agree with you on that. So with that, what do you think lawyers and law firms can do better or do differently to become better at selling their services?
Well, there's some real basic things. The number one thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is no buzzwords, a little less techno jargon or legal jargon. And we teach that to other practices too. It's not just the legal profession. So not to simplify, but a fewer buzzwords, but also there's a tendency for the legal buyer, can we call it that, or potential client, to feel like maybe, I don't want to be disparaging here, but feel like they're being talked down to. I'll give you an example. One time when I was a young businessman, I had an attorney who was going to help me collect money from a client who owed quite a bit, and we needed legal help on it. And I remember him saying, "I know this all seems so complex, Steve, but we can." So it just felt like it's not that complex. And I bought a business and I was running it, and I felt like there was a little bit of less, maybe, I don't want to say lack of respect, but there was a little bit of that. So I think you just have to be careful. People are smart, they are savvy, and just be careful and tune into who you're talking to. Some people want a lot of answers quickly and want to get to the point and make a decision, boom, boom, boom. Other people are going to take it home and think about it and talk to some other people, a spouse or a partner. So you want to make sure you're adjusting your conversations to the person across the table or across the Zoom camera, right, to their style. Are they speaking more rapidly? Then you can pick it up a notch. Are they slowing it down a little bit? Then slow it down a little bit. Are they detail oriented? Then match that up, and you can use that word. Let's go through some of the details. So that's a thing we teach about measuring or matching your communication style, how you prefer to communicate. Not so much, but our temptation is we sort of bulldoze through in our style all the time. We use our style and our manner and our words, as opposed to a little bit of chameleon-like, where we adjust to that person. By the way, that they tell me that works in relationships too. I can't be the expert on that, but that's just that ability to listen and tune in a little bit better.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there are so many different sorts of personality tests out there. I know that there's another person out there who really focuses on the DISC assessment, where you can pick up on the D, I, S, or C of, the people that you're talking to and sort of making yourself a chameleon to that. I don't know enough about the DISC off the top of my head to really jump into it, but, definitely to that point. And then to your other point, I've talked about this before. Lawyers just are for some reason intimidate people a lot. Like I've shared this story before. Before I started working here at Spotlight Branding, I had this weird image of attorneys in my head where like all of them were just, super smart and intimidating, scary people. And, attorneys are smart, but they're not that scary. They're just regular people like everyone else and stuff like that. It's easy to forget, especially when you're being a lawyer every day, you're in that world every day. It's easy to forget that, it's easy to lose sight of how people outside perceive you, especially if they don't know you. So yeah, all of that's really great stuff. So before we wrap up here, if people are interested in working with you specifically, I know you said you help business owners, lawyers are included in that, help sell their services. How can people learn more about you and get in touch with you to get some help from you?
Well, my email is steve.cashdollar@sandler.com. Cashdollar is my real name, John. I think you know that, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that out there that it's not a showbiz name. It goes back a couple hundred years. So I'm welcome an email and asking for, to share a little information. And we work kind of like attorneys where, that first hour or so is definitely on us and it's complimentary and to discover and see if there's any fit at all. And that's the best way to start to compare notes and see if what they're working on or what the problem is, if there's one, whether we can fix that. And it can usually be determined in a nice, friendly, upfront, brief conversation with a lot of questions and from both sides.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I definitely recommend it. It's most attorneys, they don't have a marketing background. Like you said at the beginning, you don't get really taught how to sell your services. But that initial consultation, that's on you. Your marketing, the stuff that we provide can only get you so far. You still got to close the deal when the people sit down or log on for that consultation. So going to wrap up here with our famous little question that we have. If you had one piece of advice for the attorneys out there, what would it be?
We've probably already talked about tune into your potential client, listen better, and take those first 3 or 4 minutes to sort of describe how that meeting's going to go. We call it an upfront agreement. People will start to make the decision whether they're going to hire you in the first 3 or 4 minutes, most research shows. So make sure that's a little bit organized, calm, and let people know what's coming over the next hour so there's no angst or no mystification on how it's going to go. And then they can relax, think it through, hear you, start to like you. People buy from people they like, and people also make decisions on people they trust.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us this week. Thank you to everyone out there for continuing to listen. Watch whatever you're doing, however you're consuming the show. We're all over the place. If you're interested in learning more about Steve, shoot him an email at steve.cashdollar@sandlertraining.com. I know he would love to talk to you, help you out, help you close more consultations and become a more effective seller of your services. And that's going to do it for us this week. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. To learn more, go to spotlightbranding.com/center stage.